Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about are luxury, real super luxury watches and outstanding movements. So often luxury brands are associated with cheap movements, basically cheap watches. But if you look, you can find some really amazing ones. Now, one of the things about that is that sometimes they don't hold their price. Okay, remember they're going to hang on to their value, but their price may not hold up. And some of these watches are just crazy expensive. Now, one thing to understand about luxury companies is that they're some of the richest in the world. Recently, Elon Musk was sort of went from the richest billionaire to the second or third, something like that. Poor guy. Anyway, he Elon Musk was in all kinds of tech, very bright guy, and then he did some stuff. Then his stock went way down, and so his billions went down. The guy who is now first, I think. He's the head of Louis Vuitton, LVMH, Maurice Louis Vuitton, Maurice Hennessy, something like that. Anyway, he's now, he's now the richest guy. So there's just this incredible amount of wealth in this. And so when these guys want to make a watch, they're not going to have to, go find the cheapest watch, the cheapest movement. They can get not only the best movement, they can get the best case, they can get the best of everything. So let's take a look at what they get and maybe sort of trying to find some way that we as collectors can find a deal in all of this. Now, the first one I want to talk to you, and a lot of these have won Grand Prix awards, not all of them, but a lot of them. The first one is Fabergé. This is the travel time watch. It won the travel. It's called the Fabergé Visionnaire DTZ. DTZ standing for dual time zone. Now, the movement was made by Jean-Marc Viderec at Agenor. It's called the AGH 6924, 3 hertz. Just remarkable, really beautiful movement. And so, you're looking at a watch and saying, what do they know? They're a luxury brand. Don't make that mistake. Now, a second one is Chanel. This is a watch I've always liked, Monsieur de Chanel. This was pre-selected as one of the watches for a mechanical exception. Now, this gets complicated, okay? This is a manual winding movement called the Chanel Caliber 1. 28,800 VPH, 4 hertz, 72-hour reserve. Now, Chanel owns what they call a friendly share of Romain Gauthier. And when they set out to make a movement, that was the guy they went to. And so you can see his influence in the design of this movement. Now, if you go out and you try to find a Romain Gauthier watch, they're really expensive. Now, at the same time, this is something else, too. I didn't realize they bought a Swiss case maker called Châtelet. And this is an A1 case maker. So here you have Chanel comes out with a watch called Monsieur de Chanel. A lot of guys, it's a Chanel. How could they make a good guy's watch? Well, they have. They made an incredible watch. Jumping hours, retrograde minutes, just a real beauty. And they have a top watchmaker behind him on this, just like the Fabergé did. Now, the second one is BVLGARI. Because there's a lot to BVLGARI. Now, this, for a very short period of time, I think only like a year, I think it was back in 2012, somewhere around there, they came out with a watch that was called the BVLGARI Daniel Roth Papillon Voyager. Now, the difference between this Papillon and the one that Daniel Roth had made under his own company is that this one had a 24-hour element right in the middle. They had a second time zone. That's why it's called the Voyageurs. So it's a travel watch. Up at just beneath 12 o'clock, you see 18. Well, 18 is 1800 hours. So you've got a 24 hours at the top, and then you have right beneath that, you have a 24-hour wheel, and you can see the little blue pointer down there pointing at about, looks like 1600 hours. So, it's really incredible. And but it's by BVLGARI. Now, this, like I said, this relationship lasted a very short period of time. But Daniel Roth his stuff is amazing. They right now, if you want a Daniel Roth watch, it's a waiting list and over $100,000 for one of his tourbillons. But again, here you have BVLGARI, a luxury brand associated for a very short period of time with one of the top watchmakers. Another one is looking around for something. Maybe you can find something that is, as they say in boxing, punching way above its weight. Now, HERMÈS, probably most people know that HERMÈS bought 25% of Vauchour, okay? They did. But Vauchour, while a very good movement maker, to make this watch, the Couleur de Lune, sorry about my French, it's terrible, I try, but it's the best I can do. Now, this one won the 2019 Calor and Astronomy Watch Prize. This is an amazing watch for these two discs going around. But apparently, Jean-Francois Mojon, who, again, one of the top watchmakers, worked with HERMÈS and Vauchour and Crenode. There was a Crenode module. Jean-Francois Mojon owns Crenode. So it's sort of, so you find these top watchmakers in different places. Now, this was done with an HERMÈS manufacturer movement called the H1837. You'll find a whole lot of gems in HERMÈS watches like that. If you look around, you find some really good stuff. Again, this is another one punching way above its weight. Now, this next one, Van Cleef Arpels. Now, for years, Van Cleef Arpels has had these really good watches, mostly for women. They had one that was actually made originally in 1949 by Cleef Arpels for guys. He made a guy's watch, and then some years later, I think in sometime in 20-something or other, they came up with this watch called Heure d'ici et Heure d'ailleurs, which is dual time with the retrograde minutes. Now, here again, this is something that they had done with the Piaget movement. But so they hired Jean-Marc Viderec to come in, take a look at it, and see if he could sort of put a dual time with the Piaget. Well, he looked at it and said there was no way that he could see how he could do that. And so, and they had all kinds of other things. We want it thin. We want automatic. Well, an automatic will stack the thing up pretty quickly. So what he did, using a mini rotor, little back here's a little mini rotor that he used on this watch. He created the automatic. You can see how thin the watch is. I mean, with it for an automatic. Then he put in the dual time zone. He did it with two jumping hours. You can see there on the far right, they have those two discs, and those are the jumping hour discs. And then on top, of course, he added the retrograde minutes. So here again, you have another company. Now, if you look at Van Cleef Arpels, the number of Grand Prix awards they've won a huge number of awards. And they won another one this last year. They win them all the time, primarily because they get the work by Agenor or somebody else. They had one by Kristen Vanderklaw is another one for this astronomical one they did. So again, here you have you have Van Cleef and Arpels is, they're jewelry makers, but here again we have something else. Hermès was making scarves and handbags. BVLGARI was making all kinds of just incredible jewelry. Same with Chanel. Same with Fabergé. But they also have watches with some of the best movements by some of the best movement makers. Okay, now one of the things that I think is important is that also things change. Okay, now if we look at this Harry Winston, this is called the Premier Perpetual Calendar. This is a perpetual calendar watch, and there's white gold by Harry Winston. Now, oh boy, I'm not sure when it was, but Harry Winston was known as a jeweler, period. Okay, one of the jeweler of the stars. Every time they'd have someone on the runway, they'd have these Harry Winston babbles on them and sparkling and so forth. However, they made watches and they had them, but what they did was that they'd get these top watchmakers to make these great watches. This Premier Perpetual Calendar has an AGH 111 in it. Again, this is something by Jean-Marc Viderec. I'm not sure when it was done, but I got a feeling that Roger Dubuis may have been involved too. I have no evidence of that other than the fact that Jean-Marc Viderec and Roger Dubuis were good friends and worked on a lot of projects together. Also were at Harry Winston at the same time. Again, this is your finding. Now, if you look at a lot of Harry Winstons, you can find certain features of it. I got one of their premier biretrogrades, and the biretrogrades is a module that was, again, by Jean-Marc Viderec. See, Viderec, unlike some of the other tip-top watchmakers, never made watches. He made modules and movements for watches, but not the watches themselves. And that was what he chose to do. And so this is why, if you look at his, I think there was one Grand Prix award that he won, and that was for the Watchmaker of the Year back in 2007, which was the first one they gave out. But you'll find a lot of these in these top luxury watch companies. You'll find his work in it. That's where I find all of mine. Okay, finally, sort of coming back to earth, so something more affordable. There's a watch I've always liked. It's called the J12 by Chanel. Now, the J12 went through a lot of different iterations, and a couple of years ago, they came out with one with a new movement. Now, before they were using ETA movements, but suddenly they're out with this movement called the Caliber 12.1. And it turns out that it was by this company called Canisi. And Canisi is jointly owned between Chanel and Tudor. Well, I was looking at one of the ones that Canisi made for Tudor and then looked at the one they made for Chanel. They were very different looking. Now remember, Chanel has a friendly share in Romain Gauthier. And one of the things about Gauthier, they can make everything for their movement, which is, most watchmakers don't. They have all these little companies that make all the different parts for them, their design. And so, but a brand new one is $7,500. The trick is, of course, is you flip it over on the back, and you can see that it looks a great deal like there's Romain Gauthier influence in that. Now, in the bottom is one I talked about before, and this is one that one of the things about some of these luxury companies, they're jewelers, and they make these incredible cases. I mean, so instead of getting, something that is average, you get something that is really remarkable as far as a case is concerned. One of the things on this Harry Winston case by Bothierre is that it has the lug swivel, so you can really get a comfortable fit on that. Here, let me see. Now these don't swivel, but the case itself has depth. It's an amazing case. But the reason I got it and like it so much, it has an Agenor module. It's just a module that involves two Agonese discs, great big ones, and they turn the wheel of this. I don't know if you can see this or not, but the wheel to the side has this smooth, very smooth. It's like it's designed after a Ferris wheel. The one that I'm showing there is simply the same thing, except it has a second hand. And this one I found for only was $25.33. So, this is really an incredible watch. Now, this terrible name is by HERMÈS, and HERMÈS used to make baubles for royalty. All right, they still do. But here's one of their watches with their HERMÈS Dandy Arty watches. Terrible name, but you can live with that. Anyway, so any other discoveries like that you can find, let me know, because this is something that if we learn about all these little hidey holes where we might be able to find something we can't afford otherwise, it's worth looking for. This is an opportunity to subscribe if you'd like. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection. But before you go, I really want to hear from you. Take care.